Hi, folks. This is Mark Smith and Angie Bond with our weekly show, Angie and Mark's hit show. Um, and we're going to be sharing a topic that people ask, especially women. They're like, "How do I set boundaries? How do I set boundaries? How do I set boundaries? How do I set?" And I usually say, "You can't." And they're like, well, thank you very much for that. um, in order to set boundaries, um, your recovery and codependency has to be somewhat advanced. So um, I know when I brought this topic up, actually it was one of my other life coach people suggested it as a topic, and it sounded like a good topic at the time. But so what was your reaction to the topic of boundaries this week?
Well, yeah, Mark texted me. What do you think about boundaries for our next topic? And I thought, boundaries. Did he look at the three topic suggestions that I had sent him previously?
Lack
So,
thereof.
yeah. So my response via text to Mark was, "Well, I guess I'll do some research because I suck at boundaries. Just and not in every aspect of my life, I'll say. But as a mother, I definitely really suck at boundaries.
Hey, there's the title to the video. I'm gonna call, we should call it "Why Codependents Suck at Boundaries."
There you
Yeah.
go. um, I guess, I've been able to, I mean, I know who I am and what I like and what I don't like. And I can be a little selfish with my time when it comes to friends and sometimes family. um, so I have been fairly successful in being able to say no, and I wasn't always successful in saying no to things in my life. But I have friends that will say, hey, we're getting together, and you want to come over, just a few friends, and even though there's COVID, but honestly, even if it wasn't COVID, I like to stay at home. I work, I have activities that I do, and then in my downtime, there's times where I get together with friends, but I can easily say no. So that's great. But when it comes to my kids, even though they're adults, I feel a certain responsibility. I feel like I haven't been successful in setting boundaries for them when they were not adults. Therefore, they still expect that as an adult. I feel like I've set myself up for them not respecting me in those
Right.
boundaries.
Right.
And that's a struggle. I mean, honestly, when I thought about it, I'm like, well, I'll probably cry when we talk about this.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, because I don't feel like, maybe I don't respect myself enough in my relationship with my kids. And I do feel disrespected a lot of times.
Right. Right. But I think that's where a lot of women and a lot of moms sort of live, is they want more respect. They want more independent, autonomous, uh, contributor to society, children, adult children, but it's not happening. And it's a very, very painful subject. It's not easy.
Mhm. Right. And it's the subject that makes me want to buy a RV. And
I'm laughing, but I know you're
yeah,
fairly
you know what I'm going to
serious.
say.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I want to, sell my worldly possessions and live in an RV and drive around with my dogs. and that's it.
There
That's
you
all you
have it, folks. In lieu of boundaries, buy an RV, drive around with your dogs, and just run away because uh, it's hard. It's painful to have half the power in your belly to set a boundary and make an impact, and uh, but just not quite enough, to make the impact that you see needs to be made.
right. To stick to it. I mean, this week with one of my kids, one of them has just not made great financial decisions over the past few years, and you know, I'm feeling them out a lot. And a conversation this week where again they are in a bad financial spot, and I said, "Look, you have this vehicle. If you run this vehicle into the ground, I am not helping you with another vehicle. You will have to Uber to wherever you want to go. So just know that right now." Um, and I was talking to them today, and they were, they couldn't pay rent on time and they need a new windshield wiper. And I could have easily transferred the money over to their account, but I did not. So I'm pretty darn proud of myself for that.
You
But it
should be. You should be.
still killing me inside, really.
What's the feeling? It's the sense. What's the feeling that's underneath there?
Well, it's fear. They are not in a good place emotionally right now or financially, obviously. And I feel like, well, what if they would hurt themselves?
I
But
see. I
so
see.
that's,
I
and
see.
I'm sure I'm not alone, you know, as a mom thinking, I don't want my actions to, push them towards something like that.
Right. Right.
And whether it's realistic or not, it's still a fear.
Right. Right. So this is your kryptonite.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me share 10 truths about the whole topic of boundaries. Um, I think that the more you know about something, the more empowered you can be. And having said that, it's a combination of knowledge and personal growth and fire in your belly. And sometimes it's the saying no and being proud of you. I mean, it looks like there's is there underlying sadness with it too for you?
Yeah. We haven't had, I'm not going to say we've had a hard life, but it wasn't always an easy life, especially being a single mom with 5 children and, having lost a child. There's a lot of,
That sounds
like,
really hard to me.
yeah. Well, I mean, but I can always think of somebody that's had it a lot worse. I guess the struggles that you have in life, you're able to deal with. And I try not to, have a pity party, but sometimes I feel like I haven't done my kids um, any favors as far as being a strong disciplinarian and a strong boundary setter and being able to really stick to those boundaries. So, I feel like I've done them a disservice as an overfunctioner that way.
Everybody does their kids disservices of one sort or another.
Hmm.
Um, uh, I think I did my son a service in a way that there was some areas that I underfunctioned in, and then he was on a mission to not be his dad, and he's become unusually highly successful at an early age. So sometimes sometimes underfunction. It's like there's really a pattern from generation to generation. If you overfunction and you're too strong and you give too much, you can bring unintended. That's the last thing you wanted, was that kind of harm. And then there's people like you and me who grew up with underfunctioning parents, and then you know uh, it causes you in a lot of areas of your life that you have to overfunction to survive. It's a survival mechanism.
Right.
So
I do have a humorous over functioning story to
tell
tell.
your humorous overfunctioning story.
Just occurred to me when my oldest went to kindergarten. Um, I guess the teacher had asked them to draw a picture of their mom or parents or something like that. And at that point, I had three children. Yeah. And he comes home and I'm going through his papers and I come across this picture and I'm like, what's this? And he's like, oh, we had to draw a picture of our mom, parent. And the picture is of me lying on a couch. And I was just, I'm like, really? When have you ever seen me lie on a couch? And it was just astounding to me that that's how he chose, or that's what was.
Is that how he wanted you to be? Was he wishing you rest or something?
That would have been a nice thing. He didn't say that, but I don't think he had a good response for when I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was just, as an overfunctioner, it was like the worst thing. I might as well have been, taking drugs and drinking. So
Did he bring that to the school and show it to people?
well, I don't think that was like displayed in a hallway or anything,
Okay.
but his teacher knew. That's
Yeah.
what, yeah, that's what I'm doing all day, laying on a couch.
That's funny that it made me think of a story when my son was going to kindergarten. He said, "Dad, can you go with me?" I just remember those memories when they're little. It's just so precious, you know.
Yeah.
So over functioning moms, it doesn't necessarily translate into champion boundary setter. So let me go over these 10 concepts about boundaries. Number one, boundaries are set ahead of time, and you can be quite pleasant when you're setting a boundary. You don't have to lecture. I was working with a codependent lady last night, and she has some concerns for her son, but it her communications come across. I had to be authentic and say they sounded a little they sound lecturing and nagging, but also whiny. And
Mhm.
what's a kid going to do with that? You know, that
Right.
they're going to eat that alive. You know, they're not going to respond in the way that you want. So uh, the boundary needs to be set ahead of time, pleasantly, firmly, but there's got to be a consequence, and it has to be spelled out. And it preferably it's a natural consequence that uh, causes them pain and benefits you, whether you're talking about a significant other or whether you're talking about uh, uh, a kid. Looks like you have a thought. Do you have a reaction to what I'm saying?
I do. Yeah. Sorry. Just, I'm just going to throw this out, see if you think this would be kind of a good way to express a boundary, because usually, yeah, I would be lecturing when I set a boundary. Um, I think I read this on Facebook, one of the social media platforms, where a mom said, don't say to your child, will you clean your room before you come down for dinner? Say, once your room is clean, you may join us for dinner.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
What a positive way to say it. That's what I'm talking. That's plus plus.
Yeah.
You know, maybe everybody doesn't understand the concept. The first plus is you, the other plus is the other person, and that's the healthy way to present something. Whether it's an employee, I was working with an employee or an employer, a business owner, and uh, running a business is like herding cats sometimes with the employees. It's difficult. It's difficult work. You got to really have your stuff together, and nobody does all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he had slipped into a plus minus perspective, and I was saying, man, you got to shift out of that, because you're gonna have civil war on your hands pretty soon. You need to find a way to uh, own whatever's going on and shift into plus plus, or you're going to have a rebellion on your hands. So the second thing is, it's always best if there's a natural consequence. uh, uh, you know uh, the one you mentioned about the car, um, if they don't do what it takes to have a mobile car that has
Mm-hmm.
brakes, and is adequately insured, and there's gas in it, then they Uber.
Mm-hmm.
There's your natural consequence. Um, one of the best natural consequences that I can think of, it's in relationships. If a man has managed to alienate, piss off, let down, or otherwise dismay his wife or significant other, um, the way I believe women are put together, or God put women together, is that, you know uh, all the romantic stuff, will flow naturally and wonderfully. But if you don't feel seen, heard, and respected and loved, he comes rapping on your window pane like, "Who's that?"
Mm-hmm.
That ain't happening. Because, and I'm not punishing you. I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm just saying, I don't feel loved. I don't
Mm-hmm.
feel hurt. I don't feel that's a natural consequence. It's
Right.
motivated many a man to get into therapy, or many a man to learn how to change whatever he's doing, because he's motivated all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
natural consequence. Uh, People have heard me say this quote, and I won't I won't say the book it comes out of, because it might be an offensive sounding book. But the author's name is Sherry Argov, and the quote is, "Truly powerful people, they don't need to explain their need for respect. They just don't engage with people that don't give it to them."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you say, "Well, how do I not engage with my kids?" And that would be, you could put the phrase over function.
Mm-hmm.
They don't over function with their kids. They don't care more about the kid's problems than the kid cares about the kid's problems. Or, you translate employee, you could translate significant other, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is, a lot of times, whether it's an employer, or whether it's somebody in a relationship, or whether it's a parent, then the tone is victimy. And whenever I feel victimized, I said this to this fellow last night. I hold a meeting with the person that's the problem. And he goes, well, I'm doing that. I'm meeting with this guy tomorrow. I said, no, I'm talking about the guy in the mirror.
Mhm.
If you have respect problem, people not respecting you enough, and you have people violating supposed boundaries, you don't have a boundary. And the person whose responsibility it is for it not working is you, which is good
Right.
news, because you can work on you and you can fix you. So the fourth thing I want to say is, sometimes it's a matter of just having enough steel in your spine and fire in your belly. Overfunctioners have a lot of steel in their spine, a lot of fire in their belly for working, for providing, for having a nice, clean environment, and doing more than their fair share of the chores. But um, a lot of times, uh, like I said, they're on half a tank when it comes to um, uh, being able to make those choices that might seem hurtful to the kid. In the long run, you mentioned the specter of suicide, and I know there's just an epidemic of that among young people. But the kid who's in the long run more likely to commit suicide is the one who wasn't equipped to become self-sufficient, and live in their develop an adult self to begin with, and then live in it. But kids that had too much done for them, and then they figure out. I always had this saying with my kids. I'd say the world, they'd say the world, I'd say does not, they'd say does revolve around you, because it don't. When you grow up and you get a job, the world doesn't revolve around you. It revolves around the boss and the company, probably, in that situation. So just don't be discouraged by your inability to set boundaries. Whenever I'm discouraged with something that I'm not good at, first I got to admit to myself that it's a struggle. And the second thing I do is, I listen to books about it, I learn more about it, and I soak in that material, and that points me in the right direction. Many years ago, I found some really excellent material on natural consequences and boundary setting. It was called Raising Capable People. And all the counter dependents, I had everybody read it. Back then, it was Mark's new book of the week, or new flavor of the year, or whatever. And this one was a great book on raising capable. That's what you want to do, is raise a capable kid, right?
Yeah.
But the counter dependents read the book, understood it, and then applied it. The codependents read the book, understood it, and then couldn't do it.
Hmm.
For the most part, they struggled with it because they simply didn't have enough punch. That there was too much selflessness, and too much other centeredness, and not enough healthy self entitlement. And I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. Are you going to love yourself enough? And um, again, when you're raised and you're not loved enough, and you have to sort of scramble to survive, then you don't love yourself enough to let your kids struggle. That's just, it goes against how you're put together.
Mhm.
So what's the purpose of a boundary? It ain't to control the other person. That's a bit of a I'm going to set a boundary on you, by God. That's not the spirit. The purpose of a boundary is to protect you.
Mhm.
That's the purpose. I'll give you an example of a natural consequence, that something I use, um, and that is, and I'm actually not good at getting this out in writing to my people that I meet with online. I got to do better with that. But people that come in my office, I hand them a piece of paper, and it says, "Dude, if you don't give me 24 hours notice and you ain't sick, I'm not mad at you. You had to work overtime. I get it. I understand it completely. But I could have booked that session 8 other times, to 8 other people, but I've been saving it for 3 weeks for you.
Mhm.
And you're paying for that session. Now that's the boundary. If you don't like it, then don't see me." Because
Right.
that really, every self-respecting therapist has that boundary.
Mhm.
You sort of have to, because sometimes people get busy and they just don't feel like it. Not because they don't want to do therapy, it's because so many things are pressing in on them. But
Right.
then they got thinking, man, I got paid $200 and I don't get nothing for it. Shoot, I'll make it happen. You know.
Right.
So that's that. So what happens when that happens? I'm all fired up and I'm ready for the session. I block the time out, and then I find out like an hour ahead of time that something's come up. When you have a good boundary and you have a natural consequence that benefits you, you're going to win either way.
Right.
So I have mixed feelings. I'm like, I sort of was fired up to work with so and so, but um, now I've got an hour that I can work on something else. But I'm not feeling victimized that I could have scheduled it 8 other times and I'm missing out on that income. So that's an example of a boundary offering protection to you.
Right. Okay.
So um, a word that gets used sometimes is ultimatum,
Mhm.
and there, the only difference between a boundary and an ultimatum is how you say it. You know, with a boundary, you say it ahead of time. You're not being reactive at all. I tell people that I've been pulled over by police officers several times in my life for either speeding or sometimes I get a little weavy in the road, surprisingly. Um, not just because I'm a goofball is, and just get a little weavy sometimes. But I've never had a police officer be rude to me or chew me out or tell me the next time I do that, then something really bad's going to happen. You're going to jail or something like that. They call me sir. Hello, sir. May I have your license and registration? And I'm like, yes, sir, you may. And I hand it to them, and they say, wait, right here, and they go and they take forever. I think they take it. They're in there watching TV. They're just torturing you, while you're sitting in the car. You're like, am I going to get a ticket or am I going to get a warning? Which one is it?
Yeah.
And then they come back and hand it to you, and you get a ticket, and um, that packs a wallop.
Mhm.
You're like, I'm gonna slow down or I'm gonna pay better attention. Um, so uh, an ultimatum is a power play. An ultimatum is a threat. and it's shared when somebody's being emotionally reactive. Um, I don't mean to be overly political here. I don't mean to offend anybody, but a good example of somebody who gets reactive and throws down ultimatums is our former president. I think y'all know who I'm talking about. Um, it's something that, I mean, it can scare people, it can bully people, but that isn't the goal. The goal is to protect you and ultimately result in some learning and growth and capability by the other person, you know? So you're not even, a lot of times, ironically, you're not even trying to be of help to another person. The best way to help somebody is to quit trying to help somebody. Help
Mhm.
yourself.
Right.
When you help yourself, you know, you accidentally, it'll filter down and they'll psychologically see Jesus, so to speak, and they'll have to grow up because, dang, mom ain't going to buy me those windshield wipers. How am I going to get windshield wipers? You know, because it rains every now and again. I better come up with a plan. Maybe I can work some extra hours and get some windshield wipers, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so when my practice first started, it started in Carmel, Indiana, and there's a road called Third Avenue Southwest, and that's where we had our office. And now there's a Palladium that's worldwide famous, you know, music venue there. And but back in 1989, when I started the practice, it was a bean field, and the speed limit was 30 miles an hour. And of course, I'd always be running. Back in my first year of the practice, I was always running late. I know it probably
I can believe
surprises you, shocking. So I'd be going to, and three times I got pulled over, and I didn't get a ticket. I got a warning. And the truth is, I think what it was the police knew it was a dumb law, that it's a bean field. You might as well be out in the country. It might as well be 45 instead of 30, you
that. Mhm.
know? So if you don't have boundaries with consequences, people won't take you seriously. As soon as they pulled out from my side, I went right back to going 55.
Mhm.
That's just sort of human nature. So, in order to be, in order to command the respect, and in this case, I don't think they were soft. I think they were just recognizing we got to pull you over to say it, but we don't have, uh, you know, the insult to your intelligence to actually hand you a ticket here because we're out in the middle of a bean field. But um, the thing about number nine, the thing about boundaries is if somebody violates a small boundary, you need a bigger boundary. I remember one of my favorite scenes in Roots, you know, aging myself, but 1976 miniseries that I think it was still the most watched miniseries ever. But Chicken George, which is one of the most colorful characters, he plays sort of the hero in the thing. And they were going to escape, and the bad guys had a couple of guys hanging back to catch them. And but Chicken George had thought ahead, and he had guys back there too. And he says, you know, if you got yourself a plan that don't work, get yourself a better plan. And
Mhm.
it's the same thing with boundaries. Somebody gets one DWI, that's bad.
Mhm.
You get two, that's real bad. You get
Yeah.
three, you going to jail.
Mhm.
If you don't go to jail, you got a really good lawyer. So it's like uh, the bigger the pain, you got to have bigger boundaries. Now, with a lot of times somebody says, well, I set a boundary, but there's no consequence. With safe people, you don't really need to set boundaries. All you have to do is make a request. If you ask for something that's reasonable that they can do, they're like, okay, I'll do that. And then they do it.
Yeah.
They say they're going to do it and they do it. And, but if you get somebody who's not safe, then you have to, in order to protect yourself. So a lot of times people say, well, I set a boundary on that. I said, what was the boundary? Well, I asked him to do this by such and such. Well, what's the boundary? That's not a boundary. That's a request. And
Mm-hmm.
I guess with this particular situation and that guy, he evidently wasn't safe, and he needed to have a consequence. But I love how your mom said. Say that again. What your mom said about dinner time?
It wasn't my mom.
Oh, it wasn't your mom. Okay.
No, it was just a random person on.
Oh,
She had a bunch of them. She said, "Don't don't say to your child, will you clean your room before dinner? Say, once your room is clean, you may join us for dinner."
yeah. That's along the line of this material that I found, Raising Capable People. The guy's name is Stephen Glenn, Stephen with a PH and Glenn with two N's, I think. Uh, that's the way you frame it, is in a way that really what you're doing is you're empowering and respecting the other person. But if you're nagging at somebody, you're disrespecting them, and then you wonder why they turn around and disrespect you.
Right.
It becomes a mutual disrespectful, you know, society, so to speak. So,
It's hard to
well,
see that.
it
All
is.
you're seeing is the disrespect that you're getting. And it's hard to see that you are actually disrespecting the person.
Right. Right.
About.
So, uh, and this isn't something that's unique to moms and women. There's a lot of men as well who suffer from codependency. I would like to share a book for men. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy
Mhm.
by Robert Glover. And there's been 100 books written on codependency for women, but this is the only one that I'm aware of that's specifically written for men. And it coaches them. And I've had men get that book and read it 5 times because they're so ingrained from the codependency of their childhood that they don't know how to be powerful. They hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, hold it in, then they rage.
Mhm.
And then they look like, a little kid then, instead of being, a esteemed equal, or co-partner, with somebody they're in a relationship with, or esteemed as a dad, as somebody's parent. So
Right. Or even at work.
even at work.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad if you suck at setting boundaries. Codependents do suck at setting boundaries, and life is a never ending feedback loop of teaching you.
Right.
And um, one of the cool things about recovery is you get out of victim mentality. And whenever something goes wrong, you ask yourself, how can I heal more? How can I learn more? How can I become less of an overfunctioner? How can I become genuinely more powerful. And none of that has anything to do with the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It's all an inside job. It's all, working on cleaning up your own side of the street. So, yay for boundaries. And it's okay to struggle in that area. Um, it's very common. Uh, Even somebody who's a superwoman in every other area of life and super strong in every other area, this is sort of the kryptonite that occasionally she'll struggle with. So
Mm-hmm.
so
Right. Yeah, I had, as a young mom, I don't know, and I think they still do these, like the, pampered chef parties or Tupperware parties,
mhm.
whatever. And you're sitting in there, and of course, your friends having it, and then they get more stuff if you have a party, right? Or and I would do that every single time, and I would get stressed out about it, and about will anybody come, and blah 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 blah
You got
blah.
to clean the house perfectly before they come
Oh
over.
yeah, cook.
uh,
And I remember pretty clearly, the very last time I thought, I will never host one of these again. I set my boundary and I stuck to it because it caused me so much stress. So even little things like that, you just got to be
right,
good to yourself and set a boundary. If it's not
right,
something you enjoy, walk away,
right.
let it
it's
burn.
you ought not give something that you really don't have to give.
Right.
And that's what overfunctioners and codependents do, is they're stealing from themselves to overgive to somebody else.
Mhm.
So okay, well, this was a tough topic. um I was a little bit tired, and Angie, this isn't her fastball,
No.
not her fastball. But I think there's some good material on the subject of what a boundary is and how to set it. And there's also a lot of lifting off of shame, so you don't feel some shame if you're not good at it. It's okay, just get better at it. And this video, I think, will help you do just that. So
Yes.
thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.